Just about everyone is logged in, guys, so we'll get started in just a few minutes here. All right, guys. The others will just have to sort of get caught in after we get started here. Everyone hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up. All right. Hopefully, it's not too difficult. Mr. Harriman is doing a different Zoom um, upstairs, so hopefully you're not hearing him too much. Um, Tells me you guys are on Unit 6, which let me share that with you here in a second. Uh, all right, so Unit 6 is called Basic Maneuvers in a Low Risk Environment. Um, there is no such thing as a no risk environment, but some environments are more risky than others. Um, you could think of, driving around Detroit, that's going to be a high risk environment. There's a lot of cars. lots of people, where just a gentle country road maybe not be as dangerous. But we're going to get into some of the basics of driving. Let's get started here. Let me bring up the whole overview. There we go. All right, turn it down. So we're talking about natural laws and balance. By natural laws, it's talking about a couple physics things like inertia, kinetic energy. As far as like, are you gonna have to do physics problems on the driving training exam? No. There might be one or two questions asking you, like what does inertia mean, which we'll talk about. But there's nothing difficult on the test like that. We'll talk about intersections, changing lanes, turning around, parking, and then passing and being passed. As usual, we have a video at the start. This is a pretty long video. If I recall, it's about 10 or so minutes. It's going to cover physics of car crashes. So if those things, like I said, the kinetic energy, the inertia, stuff like that. This video does a real good job of helping you visualize those concepts. So it's not a boring video. I mean, you may think it's boring, but it is a good video and you get some good info from it. But it is a longer one, so just try not to halfway through get distracted and do something else, because there is important stuff here. Anyway, I need to switch over to a different form of sharing. All right, and I'll get back with you at the end of the video.
These drivers lost control at very high speeds. The result was tragic for one driver and fortunate for the others. But why? What made the difference between walking away and being carried away? The answer can be found in some of the most basic laws of the physical universe. Hi, my name is Griff Jones. I teach high school physics. And behind me is the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety's Vehicle Research Center. It's a fascinating place where research engineers assess the crash performance of vehicles by running tests, and where they evaluate new technologies to prevent injuries, like this state-of-the-art head protection system. What's exciting for me is that this is a laboratory of practical applications in the subject I teach. And because they're set up here to crash cars and analyze those crashes, this research center provides a perfect venue for illustrating the physical laws that govern the outcome of car crashes. So follow me, and for the next few minutes, I'll take you behind the scenes where we can explore the basic science behind vehicle crashes. Let's learn about car crashes and physics. Why'd this dummy get left behind? It's called inertia, the property of matter that causes it to resist any change in its state of motion. Galileo introduced the concept in the late 1500s, and almost 100 years later, Newton used this idea to formulate his first law of motion, the law of inertia. It's why the dummy fell off the back of the truck. It was at rest, and it wanted to remain at rest. That's inertia. It's the same property that keeps the china on the table as you pull the tablecloth out from under it. Now what about a body in motion? Am I a body in motion? You bet I am. I'm moving 35 miles per hour. But from one perspective, it may not look like I'm moving at all, because in relationship to the passenger compartment, my position isn't changing. But if you look at me from the outside, you can see that I'm moving at the same speed as the vehicle, in this case about 35 miles per hour. And if Newton was right, and we know he was, I'm going to keep on moving at the same speed until an external force acts on me. Now, what does this mean to occupants of a moving vehicle? Watch this. See how the car and the crash test dummy are traveling at the same speed? Now watch what happens when the car crashes into the barrier. The front end of the car is crushing and absorbing energy, which slows down the rest of the car. But the dummy inside keeps on moving at its original speed until it strikes the steering wheel and windshield. This is because the dummy is a body in motion traveling at 35 miles per hour and remains traveling 35 miles per hour in the same direction until acted upon by an outside force. In this case, it's the impact with the steering wheel and windshield that applies the force that overcomes the dummy's inertia. Inertia is one reason that seatbelts are so important. Inertia is one reason that you want to be tied to the vehicle during a crash. If you're wearing your seatbelt, you slow down with the occupant compartment as the vehicle's front end does its job of crumpling and absorbing crash forces. Later, we'll talk about how some vehicles' front ends, or crumple zones, do a better job of absorbing crash forces than others. A G is a standard unit of acceleration or deceleration. People often refer to G's as forces, but they're not. Fighter pilots can feel as many as 9 Gs when accelerating during extreme maneuvers, and astronauts have felt as many as 11. People in serious car crashes experience even higher Gs, and this can cause injury. Now consider what happens when a car traveling 30 miles per hour hits a rigid wall, which shortens the stopping time or distance much more than panic braking. Let's again assume the driver is belted and decelerates with the passenger compartment. And let's also assume the car's front end crushes 1 foot with uniform deceleration of the passenger compartment throughout the crash. In this crash, the driver would experience 30 Gs. However, if the vehicle's front end was less stiff, so it crushed 2 feet instead of 1, the deceleration would be cut in half to 15 Gs. This is because the crush distance, or the time the force is acting on the driver, is doubled. Extending the time of impact is the basis for many of the ideas about keeping people safe in crashes. It's the reason for airbags and crumple zones in the vehicles you drive. It's the reason for crash cushions and breakaway utility poles on our highway. And it's the answer to the question I posed at the beginning of this film. This driver survived the crash because his deceleration from high speed took place over a number of seconds. This driver decelerated in a small fraction of a second and experienced forces that are often unsurvivable. Inside the passenger compartment of each car, the occupants would experience the same decelerations from 30 miles per hour to 0. The dynamics of this crash would be the same as a single vehicle crash into a rigid barrier. In a collision of 2 cars of unequal mass, the more massive car would drive the passenger compartment of the less massive car backward during the crash, causing a greater speed change in the lighter car than the heavier car. These different speed changes occurred during the same time, so the occupants of the lighter car would experience much higher accelerations, hence much higher forces than the occupant of the heavier car. This is one reason why lighter, smaller cars offer less protection to the occupants than larger, heavier cars. There's a difference between weight and size advantage in car crashes. Size helps you in all kinds of crashes. Weight is primarily an advantage in a crash with another vehicle. Even though it's all around us, energy is tough to conceptualize. Scientists have had difficulty defining energy because it exists in so many different forms. It's usually defined as the ability to do work, or as one of my students says, it's the stuff that makes things move. Energy comes in many forms. There's radiant, electrical, chemical, thermal, and nuclear energy. In relating the concept of energy to car crashes, though, we are mostly concerned with motion-related energy, kinetic energy. Moving objects have kinetic energy. A baseball thrown to a batter, a diver heading toward the water, an airplane flying through the sky, a car traveling down the highway, all have kinetic energy. The rapid transfer of kinetic energy is the cause of crash injuries. So managing kinetic energy is what keeping people safe in car crashes is all about. Brian O'Neill is the president of the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. And identical to that. That's incredible.
So one of the things we do, we put grease paint on the...
He runs the Vehicle Research Center and is one of the foremost experts in the world on vehicle safety.
Where the dummy hits. We use the term crashworthiness to describe the protection a car offers its occupants during a crash. Now, crashworthiness is a complicated concept because it involves many aspects of vehicle design. The structure, the restraint system, it all adds up to this single term we use, crashworthiness. We use the stripped-down body to illustrate the concepts of good and poor structural design for modern crashworthiness.
Brian, why is it important for the vehicle structure to perform well in a crash?
Well, this is what's left of the body and structure of a car that was in a crash, and we use this to illustrate the point. Basically, we want the occupant compartment or the safety cage to remain intact. We don't want any damage or intrusion into this part of the vehicle during the crash.
Okay.
We want all of the damage of the crash confined to the front end.
So even though all this metal looks the same, it's actually different. The green metal is intended to crumple, to give in the collision.
If we can crumple the front end of the car without allowing any damage to the occupant compartment, then the people inside can be protected against serious injury. Basically, we want the front end to be buckling during the crash so that the occupant compartment is slowed down at a gentler rate.
Right. Kind of like jumping off of a step and keeping your knees straight and landing on the floor versus bending your knees when you land.
Exactly the same concept. So this is a vehicle that did well because there's very little intrusion anywhere in the occupant compartment. These elements here, even though they're strong enough to hold an engine and suspension, actually buckled and crushed just like they're designed to do. So the damage is confined to the front end. We look at a vehicle like this, and this is an example of a very poor safety cage. This vehicle was in a 40-mile-an-hour crash, and as you can see that the occupant compartment has collapsed, it's been driven backwards. As a result, the driver's space has been greatly reduced. So someone sitting in this vehicle is obviously at a high risk of injury.
So even if the restraint systems do function properly, the airbag, the seat belts, the person still is in great danger.
This person in this vehicle, even with a belt system and airbag, is at significant risk of injury because the compartment is collapsing.
So it's analogous to shipping a box of china. You can have all the best packing in the world around the china, but if the box is weak, you're going to break the china.
When the safety cage collapses, you're going to have injuries to the occupants. So this is an example of poor crashworthiness. But this vehicle was in the same crash, 40-mile-an-hour offset crash, and you can see that now the safety cage has remained intact. There's very little intrusion anywhere. The damage is confined to the crumple zone of the vehicle. This is the way it should be. A person in a crash like this, wearing their seat belt and protected by the airbag, can walk away from the crash with no injury.
Right. If I stand over here and I just look towards the rear of the car and I ignore the airbag, this doesn't even look like it's been in a crash.
That's right. This is good performance, good crashworthiness.
In our shipping box analogy, this is an example of a strong box.
That's right. The people in this box will be protected.
Brian, obviously this car performed well, but what's in the future for crashworthiness?
This is an illustration of how good we can do with frontal crashworthiness, but frontal crashes are only part of the problem. We obviously also have to pay attention to other crash modes, and one of the most important is the side impact crash. Now, this is a vehicle that was in a severe side impact crash. This vehicle was going 20 miles an hour sideways into a pole. And as you can see, in a side crash, you don't have all the crush space you have in a frontal crash. We just have the width of the door and the padding, And in this case, we have an airbag on the inside, which creates even more space. We inflate the airbag to create more crush space. And we also have an inflatable airbag to provide head protection up in this region. This deploys from this roof area here. So the physics are the same, the engineering challenges are greater.
I am always looking for ways to relate the physics that I teach to the real world that my students experience. And nothing is more relevant than traveling in an automobile. You probably do it every day. I hope that makes the message of this film important to each and every one of you. I also hope you've learned why some of the choices you make about the type of car you drive and the kind of driving you do can make a difference in whether you survive on the highway. Remember, even the best protected race car drivers don't survive very high-speed crashes. The bottom line is the dynamics of a motor vehicle crash. What happens to your car and you is determined by hard science. You can't argue with the laws of physics.
All right, guys, welcome back. Oops. Let's go ahead and get a thumbs up if you're still with me. Make sure there's no cardboard cutouts out there.
Okay,
Looks good.
This one kid told me he freezes himself, so it looks like he's still there.
Oh.
Did Oliver come in?
All right, so like I said, it was a pretty long video about the physics of car crashes, but it does a pretty good job sort of describing some of this stuff. Why we should use seatbelts and things like that. Let's look at these questions though. It says, what is the basis for many of the ideas used to keep people safe? That's an easy one, so I'll just go ahead and answer it. It's right here in the title, physics, scientific research, both statistics that they get from accidents that do happen and sort of the information they get from recreating accidents. You saw where they intentionally crash cars with dummies in them, with sensors and whatnot. They can sort of gather information, and so we know how accidents occur, what parts of the car are weaker, and things like that. What happens in a collision with two cars of unequal mass? So if a car that's small is hit by a car that's large, what happens? Let's go with Morgan.
They hit at the same time and then they both have the same results at the end.
All right, that's part of it. Let's, Avery, do you got anything different to say? Think you're muted still. Oh, no problem. I can come, okay, perfect. That's fine. I'll just take it from there.
Oh, wait,
So-
I'm back.
Oh, perfect.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. It wouldn't let me unmute. It like took me like 40 tries. If it's unequal mass, then the bigger car is gonna crush the little car.
Exactly. Think about, the most extreme example, like a VW Bug getting hit by a semi. There's barely going to be a scratch on the semi, and the Bug's going to be destroyed. That's part of the reason why we recommend mid-sized vehicles for you guys. A mid-sized vehicle is going to do better in a crash than a small vehicle. It's actually going to do worse than a large vehicle, like a big pickup, but it's actually harder to control something like a big pickup. You have less chance of avoiding an accident. So a mid-sized vehicle gives you some maneuverability and some accident protection. But I would never recommend one of my new students go out and get like a little Mini Cooper or a VW Bug, because you're going to be into an accident as a new driver. There's a higher chance of it, and you've basically given yourself no protection. It's something to consider when purchasing a vehicle. Why is it important for the vehicle structure to perform well in a crash? It's an easy answer. So Trinity, I'll let you answer that one. Oh, don't forget to unmute.
Because if it were to crash, then it'll be more safer for the person to survive.
Exactly. It's the obvious answer. There's things that they talk about in the video like crumple zones, airbags, side impact airbags, and all of these sorts of things that sort of happen behind the scenes inside of the vehicle. Stuff that doesn't even require us to do anything to make it work. You know, seatbelt requires us to buckle it, but an airbag, you know, works without our input. Crumple zones work without our input. If it's all these things sort of happen without us doing anything, why is it important to teach you about it? And it's so that when you go to purchase a car, you can make a more intelligent decision. All right, take any person of any age, okay, my age group, your age group. And let's say, you know, some rich person was like, hey, I'm gonna buy you a new car. Let's go get one. What is the first thing most people are thinking about when they wanna buy a new car? What it's gonna look like. And that's also the least important factor. It has nothing to do with fuel economy. It has nothing to do with steerability, maneuverability, or accident ratings. Still, you know, we want to drive something that we're proud to be in. But when you go to purchase a vehicle, you need to consider these other things. Look at safety ratings and sort of test results. You know, if you go to a reputable dealer and you ask to see safety ratings, they'll show you that information. They'll have it on hand. You know, if you're kind of at some shiesty place and like, oh, you don't need that. We don't even bother keeping that. Maybe go somewhere else if they're not too concerned about your safety. As you get older, you start to feel more and more like you could die any day. You start to care about things like how well is your car going to do in an accident. All right, inertia. So they did talk about this a little bit in the video. Simply put, inertia means that something that's in motion, usually in science classes you hear a body in motion tends to stay at motion, or a body at rest stays at rest. So that means if like a car is moving, it's going to continue moving until it stops, hits something. Now, obviously, we have brakes that work using friction to stop the car, but like in a sort of a scientific world, or imagine you're on ice, for example, the car's going to keep going until it hits something. So let's say that's what happens. You hit a patch of ice, you slide into the back of a stopped bus or something. Suddenly the car stops moving, but do we stop moving? No, our body continues forward because of inertia. Now, if we're wearing a seatbelt, that belt catches us and we stop going forward, but our head still goes forward because it's not strapped down, and that's what the airbag's for, to then slow down the head. So that's why all this stuff is important, is because in the natural world, inertia is a real thing. Stuff continues moving until it is stopped. Like I said, a body in motion stays in motion. And then here they say, a G is a standard unit of acceleration or deceleration. So you've probably heard, like in the video or other places, a G-force. It just stands for like the acceleration of gravity. So if you drop a hammer from the top of a building, it's going to speed up at a certain rate, the same rate as if you dropped a feather. Now, obviously, wind resistance comes into play, so it doesn't look the same. But if you were to throw a hammer down, it might be at twice the acceleration of gravity. You really don't need to know more than that unless you're going to take a physics or a physical science class. For this driver's ed, I've never seen a question on the test asking you what a standard unit of acceleration is, but it's in the slides. There's a potential it could be on there. I have seen ones asking about inertia though. All right, extending the time of impact. In the video you just watched, the guy took an egg and he threw it at a sheet versus like a brick wall. If you're throwing the egg with the same amount of force, the same speed in each case, against the brick wall, it breaks because it instantly stops. There is no extending the impact. where when it hits the sheet, it kind of pushes in and slowly came to a stop. That extended the time of the impact. Our brakes in the car do that. The airbag does that for us. The headrest behind us does that when our head snaps back. Okay, that's what this is all about. Some of you may have taken a class before or did a science fair project or something where you had to build sort of a protective cage or casing for an egg. And then that egg was dropped. Maybe a parachute came out. Maybe you had a bunch of padding, foam in the bottom, whatever. All that is demonstrating these concepts. You're trying to create something that is going to extend the time of impact so that you slow down slower. You don't just come to an immediate stop, which is very dangerous. Some of you may have parents or grandparents who talk about the old car that they used to drive back in like the 50s and the 60s, you know, these big old solid steel boats, is what people call them. They're like, yeah, you know, you're safe and you can hit anything. And that's true. They could like plow through things and barely have a dent in them. But a lot of people died because there was no cushioning. There was nothing to extend the time of impact. A rigid car coming to a stop means all those forces are going to you. Okay, a more modern car, when it's in an accident, it crushes, it smashes in, and it looks, you know, dramatic. But that's a good thing, because if the car is getting crushed, you're not getting crushed. That energy is being absorbed. All right, physical laws that affect car crashes continue. We already talked a little bit about size and weight. A larger vehicle hitting a smaller vehicle is going to receive less damage. You know, think about a bug hitting your windshield. It does no damage to your car, but it's completely destroyed because of the difference in weights. Cars are more closely in weight than a bug to a car is, but you know, like I said, it's something to consider when you purchase your vehicle. If you're worried about other drivers hitting you, maybe something a little bit bigger is what you want. Energy, specifically kinetic energy. Like I said, this isn't a science class, it's driver's ed, but we do talk a little bit about this stuff. Kinetic energy, if you don't know, is the energy of motion. So anything that moves has kinetic energy. And let's see, did it give us the formula for that? They don't, so we'll go back for a sec. Kinetic energy is equal to 1/2 mass times velocity squared. You don't need to write that down. You don't need to know it for this, for driver's ed. Like I said, you might have a physics class where you got to know it, but not for driver's ed. But the point is, it's equal to 1/2 mass times velocity squared. Mass and weight are interchangeable in this case. So if you double the weight of a vehicle, you double the amount of kinetic energy that there is. But it was also velocity squared was in there, and velocity and speed are interchangeable. So if you double your speed, 2 squared is 4, okay? If you triple your speed, 3 squared is 9. All right, if you quadruple it, 4 squared is 16. So it increases at an exponential rate, the amount of kinetic energy. So if I simply asked you what's more important in determining the force of impact, is it the weight or the speed? The answer is going to be speed. Okay, imagine this huge, big old car coming at you at 1 mile per hour. Okay, it's going to be annoying if it hits you, but it's probably not going to hurt you unless you trip and fall under it. But obviously a car traveling at just a few more miles per hour, even like 5 miles per hour, hitting you could break a bump. And obviously at road speeds, they become very dangerous. Now this works to our advantage. Okay, let's say that you notice that you're about to be in an accident. The car in front of you has stopped or something like that. You can't change the weight of your vehicle, but you can change the speed. You can start braking. So if doubling our speed quadruples the kinetic energy, then cutting our speed in half will reduce our kinetic energy by a factor of 4. So when an accident seems inevitable, it's going to happen. Don't just give up and ball up in your seat or brace yourself on the dashboard. Actively try to reduce your kinetic energy. That means slowing down with the brake, and it also means changing direction. If you're about to be in a head-on collision, but you can steer a bit so that you just sort of glancing below, that's going to drastically reduce that energy and increase your odds of surviving. All right, it's been a while, so let me just make sure everyone's still awake here. You know, give me the old thumbs up. I know it seems annoying. All right.
Where's Lucas? Perrin. Where's he at? He's the one that said it yesterday.
Oh, you want to say you like that?
Oh, there he is. He's got it.
Ah,
Yeah, good job, Lucas. You got it right.
All right, so crash worthiness. Again, this was covered in the video. When you go to purchase a vehicle, these are things to think about. This car with the poor crash worthiness, you can see where the person is sitting. This is smashed in. Yes, it's survivable, but they may have lifelong injuries and pain. This person, where they were sitting, is completely intact. Just by looking at the doors, you can tell there was no compression here. So assuming they had their seatbelt on, assuming they had an airbag, and they were properly distanced from it, this is very survivable. Yeah, you might have a bruise on your chest. You might even have a broken collarbone. Okay, you could have bruises on your face, maybe even a broken nose. But that stuff heals. If you get traumatic neck injuries or brain injuries, these types of things, that doesn't heal. So even though, yeah, there's still gonna, you're never gonna be 100% safe. I'm not just saying you get into a car that's got good crash worthiness, let's go crash it for fun. No, you're still gonna be seriously hurt and you could still die. People do still die in these types of accidents. It's just less of a chance. And anything we can do to increase our odds is better. I mean, think about it. Cars have been around for about 100 years, and technology has gotten better and better and better over those 100 years. And it's still the #1 cause of death. Okay, yes, we're doing better, but there's still always risk. All right, now we're out of sort of the car part of this. Let's talk about the road surfaces. Sort of the traction you have with the road. They define traction as the adhesion, friction, or grip between tires and the road surface. You don't need to know this definition for the test. Just understand that your tires need to have traction with the road. Okay, ice, especially wet ice, is going to be basically zero traction. That's why a car slides on those surfaces. Nice dry pavement, you have a lot of traction. You can brake quite well. And then in between is all of these sorts of things: gravelly roads, snow or slush, a rainy road. Sometimes there could be stuff like leaves and things on the road that can affect your traction, or a puddle of water that can affect your traction. It's going to require you to slow down and take these roads safer. In the winter, everything changes in Michigan. You're not going to be able to maintain the same sort of driving behaviors in the winter that you do in the summer. Okay, one of our biggest issues with you guys is getting you to slow down early and come to a gradual stop at stop signs and at red lights. A lot of times you guys wait and wait and wait and then brake a little harder. You still stop and it seems fine. But what you don't understand is that a couple months from now, when the roads are icy and snowy, that's not going to work. Your car is going to continue sliding into the back of the person in front of you. So you got to learn now and train yourself now that it's better to slow down early and then move up, as opposed to slow down late and stopping exactly where you want to be. Okay, I tell people, try to stop a car length before what you want to be. That way, if the road is slippery, there is ice or something, or your foot slides off the brake, whatever the case may be, you've got a whole car length to figure that out. More on stuff in the road. You may see a pile of leaves, you may see a pile of snow or a puddle. And as a teenager, I was one too, you might think it's fun or funny or cool to drive through it. See the leaves go flying, watch the water go splashing, whatever. But you don't know what that hides, okay? Someone may have left a rake in the leaves or a shovel in the snow. There could be a child playing in them, okay? A puddle might be hiding a pothole that can damage your vehicle. A friend of mine drove through a pothole one time, a puddle that he didn't know was a pothole, and it ripped the tire off of his car. I'm not saying he got a flat. I'm saying that wheel was ripped off of his car by the pothole that was under that puddle because he didn't slow down for it. When we drive, we're just trying to get from point A to point B safely. We're not out there to do stupid, silly stuff for fun. All right, moving on. So we talked about inertia. A vehicle continues to move until acted upon, and traction is sort of the grip we have with the road. So when we turn direction, our vehicle goes from one direction to another. We have to overcome that inertia with traction. Remember, the car wants to continue going straight, and then the grip that our wheels have on the road allows us to change our direction. If the inertia is greater than the traction, then the car is just going to continue going forward. It could be ice, gravel, whatever, it'll just slide. So that's why we got to slow down early so that the traction we have between the road and the tires is enough to change our direction. Now, if you have really bad tires, for example, this is going to be harder for you. You'll be more likely to slide. So it's one reason why you need to keep up on your vehicle maintenance. Make sure you have good tire tread and things like that. It's not all about road conditions. All right, factors that influence the effects of inertia. Let's go ahead and get them all up here on the screen. So sharpness of the curve. Hopefully this is an obvious one. The sharper the curve, the more your direction is changing, the greater that force of inertia is going to come into effect. Okay, you feel this before when your friends or family take a sharp curve, or maybe on a roller coaster when you go around a curve. You get thrown real tight to the side or to the other side, depending on the curve. Well, the car, if it suddenly loses traction, the whole car goes to the side, and now you're off the road. And keep in mind, they don't put curves in the road for fun. It's there because there's something that needs to be avoided. It could be a lake, it could be a cliff, it could be a giant tree or boulder. Point is, the curve is there to avoid that obstacle we don't want to hit. Now, the faster we're going, remember, kinetic energy is equal to 1/2 mass times velocity squared. The faster we go, the exponentially greater that inertia becomes. Size, height, and weight of vehicle. So a heavier vehicle is going to have more inertia. A taller vehicle, while it's going to have the same inertia as a vehicle of the same weight, it'll be more likely to tip going around curves. Okay, we don't recommend things like Jeeps for new drivers because you guys take curves too fast and they tend to tip. Okay, we recommend a car that, again, like a mid-size with a nice wide wheelbase. You can take a turn faster in that car. Not that I want you to intentionally take it faster, but when you accidentally take it faster, you're not going to flip your car over. Some roads have a slope to them. Okay, in this picture, it looks pretty much level, but I know you probably don't watch NASCAR. I don't, but I at least am aware of what a NASCAR track is. If you know what that is, they have these large slopes around the curves. So the cars are literally like riding on the side of a road. If the car wasn't moving, it would just slide right down. But it is moving, so it just sort of rides along that slope. And it's designed to do that to help you get around those curves. And then obviously roadway and surface conditions. Has it been raining? Has it been snowing? Is this a gravel road? All of that stuff is going to affect how fast you can take a curve. All right, gravity. Hopefully you've learned in school somewhat what gravity is. Maybe you don't know the formulas to calculate that, but you at least have a working knowledge of what gravity is. Okay, when something falls, it falls because of gravity. One sec. Why is my chat not popping up? Yes. Yep. Nope. All right, guys. So obviously gravity makes things fall, makes things roll down hills. If you're driving uphill, gravity is working against you. That means you're going to need to put more pressure on the gas pedal just to do the same speed. Now think about a hill. When you get to the top of the hill, either it's going to go back down the other side or it's going to level off. In either case, gravity is not going to be working against you anymore. So you've put more pressure on the gas pedal to get up the hill. Once you're at the top, actually just before you're at the top, you want to take pressure back off the gas pedal. That way, when you get to the top and gravity is no longer working against you, you won't accelerate uncontrollably. Now, especially if you're going to be going downhill, gravity is going to work with you. You'll need less gas to get downhill. Michigan's a pretty flat state, so a lot of times you're still going to need some gas to get downhill. This isn't like a mountainous state where you can just kind of roll. But keep this in mind, because our brains tell us that we live in a flat world because we build our houses level, our desks are level, our bed is level, the school is level. The roads aren't level. They've got hills and dips and things like that. And, you know, sometimes when all of a sudden you look up and you're speeding and you don't know what happened, well, it's because you went from uphill to downhill. The car, you never moved your foot off the gas pedal, so gravity has changed the way your car is reacting. Okay, balance and weight distribution. So I already talked about this a little bit, so I'll go through it pretty quick, but obviously something that sits taller is going to have be less balanced. Okay, the weight, the center of mass for it, or center of gravity, or whatever you want to call it, is higher. Okay, think about a bottle, right? I can tip a bottle over quite easily. Okay, I just push it and it falls. It has a high center of gravity. But a cereal bowl, if I'm eating out of that, it's kind of hard to tip a cereal bowl over. So when we purchase vehicles and choose our vehicles, something with a wider base can be much safer. Weight distribution. Sometimes, let's say like your parents got a pickup truck, your dad's got a pickup truck. In the winter, you might throw giant bags of salt in the back. He's not doing that just because it's winter and salt melts ice. He's doing that because he's putting extra weight on the back wheels so that he can get more of that traction. Because the weight in a pickup truck is not distributed evenly. Obviously, some vehicles have larger tires than others. That gives them more contact with the road, gives them more traction. Now, you might be thinking like, well, if big, wide tires give more traction, why don't we just put that on every car? Well, the more traction you have, the more gas you need to overcome that traction. So, you know, we don't put giant tires on all the cars because gas is expensive and it pollutes the world when we burn it. So we kind of try to find some sort of happy medium. Think about like a 10-speed bike that like people race. Those have very thin tires. It allows them to go really fast, but it doesn't give them any traction. Where a mountain bike where you need the traction has big, thick, heavily treaded tires. Some people actually have different sets of tires they use on their vehicles, summer and winter. Most people don't bother, but you never know. So here's sort of some ways your vehicle suspension can change. Just say it looks like in this picture, the person has floored it. So they've hit the gas really hard, which makes all the weight go to the back of the car. Like you go back in your seat. Well, the weight all goes onto the back wheels. So there's more traction in the back, less traction in the front. An example of this is like a motorcycle, someone doing a wheelie. Okay, they put all the weight on the back wheel and the front one comes up because all that acceleration pushes the weight to the back. Things to consider when you're driving, you know, you gotta, you know, drive at safe speeds. Slamming on the brakes is gonna put all the weight in the front. And then same thing, if you take a curve really fast, the outside of the curve is going to compress down. When I was in high school and got my license, my parents bought me a car off the side of the road, really cheap. And they gave it to me with the exact same tires that it came with. And they were terrible. And anytime I took a curve too fast, it would squeeze the air out of the tires on the side of the car that the weight was being distributed to. So I learned real quick not to take a curve too fast, because if I did, I was pulling over and pumping up my tires. So, those are things to consider. It says maximizing traction. Avoid sudden inputs when accelerating, braking, or steering. So like I said, anytime you have a rapid change in speed, you're going to have those inertial forces at their max. You really should never be flooring it. You should never be braking hard, and you should never be jerking the wheel, okay? If you're flooring it, it's because you made a mistake prior to that, okay? You pulled out when you shouldn't have, so now you have to floor it to not be hit. If you're slamming on the brakes, it's because you weren't looking far enough ahead. Yes, a deer could jump out the last second, but in general, you should be doing nice gradual changes in speed and position. Okay, sometimes in the old movies you see people driving like this. That's fake. That'll get you killed in the real world. Most steering is this, on the road itself. And then when you change lanes or something, you do a little more. Focus on executing one input at a time. Brake, steer, accelerate. Obviously, we shouldn't have a foot on the gas and brake pedal at the same time. That part's obvious. But let's say you're going into a turn. You shouldn't be, you should be braking before the turn. Then your foot comes off, the car coasts a bit, and then we speed up. It's kind of hard to describe what they're talking about in this case, but it's kind of like you learn it through practice in a vehicle. But there's going to be times when you do steer and brake and stuff while doing other things, like while steering. Let's say you're changing lanes and there's not a lot of space and you got to change lanes, you might speed up a bit. But in general, maintain speed when changing lanes and things like that. Sorry if I sort of stumbled through that part. Okay, it looks like there is another video called Approaching, Entering, Stopping, and Turning at Intersections. Intersections is where two paths of travel cross. You're crossing the path of a vehicle going in a different direction. That's where a lot of accidents can occur. So very important here. I'm not sure exactly how long this video is. It's like 5 minutes, 30 seconds. We're about halfway through the class. So what I'll do is I'll play the video and then I'll give you like 2.5 minutes to kind of, you need to go to the bathroom or something as well. All right, I'll see you guys back in about 8 or so minutes.
Let's start with turning. We approach a turn at the right speed. Here we have more than a ton of car wanting to go straight ahead and only the front tires to turn it. Whenever we go too fast, the tires lose their grip. Approaching the turn, we're better off going too slow than too fast. We start from the middle of the lane. Starting too far to the right, we have trouble getting around. Moving left at the start may make for an easier turn, but risks a collision with someone to the left or encourages someone to try passing us on the right. In making the turn, we need to allow for the fact that the rear wheels track well inside the front wheels. We need to round out the turn so that the rear wheels clear the corner. Let's see the whole turn, from the middle of the lane, around the corner, into the middle of the new lane, and straighten out. We need to guard against a few common mistakes. There's a way to keep from doing this. We need to wait until the side mirror is even with the corner before we start the turn. A second mistake is turning too wide. This usually results from starting the turn too late or not turning the wheel sharply enough. The last is not straightening soon enough and overshooting the turn. A left turn is wider and easier, but it's made the same way. We proceed to the middle of the intersection far enough to turn without cutting the corner and turn into the middle of the lane. Smoothly done.
When turning corners, there is one basic rule for lanes. We start from the lane closest to the direction we want to go and turn into the lane closest to where we came from. On a right turn, we start from the right lane and enter the right lane. This way, we cross the fewest lanes of traffic and have the smallest chance of interfering with others. If we need to be in the other lane for some reason, we change lanes after the turn.
Statistics show that new drivers are much more likely than more experienced drivers to miss seeing cars at intersections. We check the path ahead and to the left to make sure the way is clear. No problem. But it's not always that easy. This time we need to wait for that car. We can pull into the intersection, so we'll be ready when the way is clear. We keep the wheels straight ahead to keep from being pushed into the other car's path in case we're hit from behind by an inattentive driver. Okay, now can we go? He has a green light too. Always make the last check a check of the travel path you're about to enter. When we cross or enter traffic, we need a large enough gap to accelerate from a standing start. That can take several seconds. On city or residential streets where cars are traveling 25 to 30 miles per hour, that's about a half a block. Out on the highway, it's double that distance. A car may be moving a lot faster than it appears. That's why it pays to play it safe and allow plenty of room.
Room to enter is one thing. Room to exit is another. We never enter an intersection until we're sure we can make it all the way through. Let's go for a drive.
What do we do here? We edge out very slowly until we can see upstream.
We'd like to make a left turn here.
What should we do now? We were smart to ignore the guy waving us on. He has no way of knowing if the way is clear. He wants us to move so that he'll have a better view.
It looks clear now. Wrong.
Sometimes we can't get a good view of oncoming traffic. In that case, we have to wait until the light changes, or if we're lucky, traffic clears.
All right, guys, welcome back. Everyone hear me okay? Everyone is able to see the video and all that? Good. So we got a couple questions here. To keep from driving over the curb when turning, what should the driver do? Let's see here. All right, I don't think I called on you yet, Ty. So Ty Johnson, go ahead and give me an answer to that if you got one.
Either you can wait till your mirror is even with your turn, or just kind of picture your front wheels, I guess, and that's where your back wheels are basically going.
Perfect. So as far as visual referencing, we've learned that if we wait until our side mirror is in line with the curve itself, so you've got a turn here like this, when our mirror is next to that, we can start turning, and that should give us a nice smooth turn. Eventually, we're hoping to sort of learn the path our wheels take, and just keep in mind that our front wheels and our back wheels don't follow the same path. I know it's hard to show you on the screen, but I'm going to try. So imagine you start to turn, the front of your car is past the curb, but the back tire would come up over it. So you're going further before making your turn. We usually figure that out pretty quick in the driver's ed car with you guys. I know my students, I had you do some drills in the parking lot to see if you have a problem with that. So once you kind of learn it, it's not a big deal. When turning right on a road with multiple lanes, which lane should the driver enter when turning? So I'll take this one because it's really in depth. Simply put, you should always turn to the lane, or turn from the lane closest to the direction you're going into the lane closest to the direction you are going. So if we're making a right turn, we're going to start in the rightmost lane, the one next to the curb. It doesn't make sense to be in the left lane and then turn right. You're going to cut everyone off. So that part's pretty easy. If we're going to make a left turn and there's a left turn lane, we would be in the left turn lane. If not, we would be in the leftmost lane. That's how we start the turn. Here's where the problem happens. You're supposed to also end in the same lane. So a lot of people will start to, make a right turn in the rightmost lane, and then as they're turning, they go past the lane into the second one, the one that's not next to the curb. So they've gone from the right lane into the center lane. Or as they're making a left, they go all the way to the lane next to the curb. That's wrong. You're supposed to go from the rightmost to the rightmost, the leftmost to the leftmost, or whichever lane you start in, end in the exact same lane. Now, that being said, 999,999 times out of a million, that's never going to be a problem for you. People make that change where they go from one lane to the other in the middle of a turn all the time, every day. I see it constantly. I do it sometimes. Let's say, for example, you're on the pure road and you're turning left onto M15. You're coming from where the Flagstaff Diner and or Flag City Diner and Big Boy are, and you're turning left, and there's a Taco Bell right there. Now, if you do it correctly, you're turning into the middle lane on N15. You're nowhere near the Taco Bell. You've got a lane between you. But a lot of people go, I want some tacos. They make a left lane into that, or left turn into the far lane, and then they pull right into Taco Bell. And like I said, it happens every day. It's not a big deal. I've never heard of an accident happening from it. I've never heard someone getting a ticket from doing it. But you could be that 1 in a million person, okay? You're turning right into the left lane with a right on red while someone else is making a left into the left lane because they have a green arrow. two cars are going for the same lane. Only the one who's supposed to be there is in the right. And that 1 in a million chance, you're wrong. So you should be trying to do it correct anytime you can. But if every now and then you have to fudge it and go to the far lane because you would take you 10 minutes of backtracking to get back to where you were if you didn't, it's not the end of the world. But just know, that is the rules. Sometimes, by the way, there'll be more than one lane for what you want to do. Sometimes there'll be 2 left turn lanes, and both cars will be turning left at the same time. In those cases, it's very important that we don't cross over, because if both cars are going next to each other and then one crosses over, you're going to get an accident. All right, so we got some pictures here about approaching an intersection. It says search all corners, make sure you're in your proper lane. If there's any line of sight restrictions, you might have to change position. So you're coming up, you're going straight, so you're going to be in this lane, because this lane is only for right turns. You can tell by the arrow. So we're in this lane, the one that's on the inside. By the way, outside lane is the one next to the curb. Inside lane is the one next to the center line when there's 2 lanes. You're making sure that no one's running the red light. We do have a green, so we should be safe to go. But this car here could potentially turn when it's not supposed to and cause us a problem. So even though we have the right of way, we're still cautious of what could happen. We're also looking at our mirrors. If there's someone riding our butt, that means we're not going to be able to slam on the brakes without being hit. Now, that being said, if your choice is hit this person in front of you or slam on the brakes and be hit from behind, you should hit the brakes. Okay, you hitting someone in front of you is your fault. You being hit from behind is their fault, at least 99% of the time. All right, so entering an intersection. Entering an intersection is crossing a road. Just like when you're a kid, you look both ways. You look where you're going, you check your left, you check your right. You make sure it's clear before crossing. Even when we have green lights, probably once every, I would say maybe 2 or 3 years, I avoid being killed in a T-bone accident. And I do it by simply looking both ways before I cross. Even though my light's green, it's not a drag race. I don't need to floor it and go. Okay, I just ease off the brake, look both ways, no one's coming through, no one's running the red light, and then I go. It doesn't take that much time, it doesn't slow anyone down, and it keeps you safe. Check traffic and count to 3 before moving. So, as new drivers, you guys struggle to see things. You may not even notice that someone's running the red light because you're just struggling to see all there is to see. So we have things like the count of 3 technique for you. The light turns green, count to 3 before you cross. That gives time for anyone who is running the red light to go for it. Once you become a more experienced driver and you've determined that it's clear, you can just go ahead and go. You don't have to actually physically count to 3 every time. But as a new driver, that's going to keep you much safer. By the way, still look. Don't just count to 3 without looking. It says you may continue if the traffic light is green or the intersection is clear. So if no one's there, we're going to continue on through. Now, I didn't cover traffic lights with you guys. Mr. Harriman did, so I don't know if he talked about yellow lights and a point of no return. So I'm just going to briefly cover it because it involves intersections. When you're approaching an intersection and you have a green light, maybe you've been driving toward it for a few seconds and every time you look up it's green. Your brain might start telling you like it's got to turn yellow, right? It's not going to stay green this long. So your brain's telling you this is going to turn yellow. Should we start slowing down? Well, absolutely not. It's a green light. Why would we be slowing down for a green light? Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to find a point of no return. And that is a spot where you're going to commit to going through the light. Okay, let's say, again, you're driving along, the light's green, you're getting close to it, and then suddenly it turns yellow. Well, what do? Do you continue through on a yellow light? Do you stop on a yellow light? Well, it depends on how fast you're going and how close you are, right? So if it's safe enough that you can just come to a nice, safe stop, at the yellow light, then that's what you do. You slow down, you stop, it turns red, and then you wait. If you're too close to it at your current speed that you would have to slam on the brakes and go into a screeching halt into the middle of the intersection, no, that's stupid. We would never do that. We would just continue through. Now, here's the thing. If you're going to continue through a yellow light, you don't slow down. That makes it worse. Okay, if you're going to continue through, your foot is on the gas pedal. If you're going to stop, your foot is on the brake pedal. But what a lot of drivers do, especially new drivers, is this. The light turns yellow, the foot comes off the gas pedal, and then it hovers. And it's hovering because you haven't decided what to do yet. You haven't decided if you're going to stop or if you're going to go through. And while your foot's hovering, the clock is ticking. And you run out of time. You now can't stop safely, and you can't continue through safely. You're going to have to do something dangerous. So that's what a point of no return does for us. It takes the guessing game out. We don't have to hover our foot and think about what to do because we already decided. Okay, it's an imaginary line. The faster you're going, the further back from the light that line is going to be. Okay, and you're going to tell yourself this. If that light turns yellow before I pass that imaginary line, I'm committed to stopping this vehicle. And then the opposite of that is true. If that light turns yellow after I've passed that imaginary line, I'm committed to going through at the speed limit. Okay, like I said, I don't know if Mr. Harriman covered that or not, but you know, one of the reasons why we go through so many lights in this class is to try and sort of help you start learning how to judge those lights. By the way, you'll always get some wrong eventually, okay? Even me as a driver's ed instructor, sometimes I misjudge and I have to brake harder than I thought, or I continue through and it turned red on me. We're not trying to be 100% perfect. We're just trying to be as close to perfect as we can. All right. Don't block intersections. So real simple. We never enter an intersection that we can't then leave. So let's say, like in this picture here, let's say traffic was back all the way up to here. Maybe there's a train going by up there or something. Now, our light turns green. Do we just pull in front and just join the line, blocking people from the right and left? Absolutely not. If you can't get to the other side of the intersection, don't start by entering it. Wait until you know you can get all the way through, then go through. All right, more stopping at intersections. It says you may have to stop if there is a yellow or red light or a stop sign or a yield sign or something preventing your path of travel. So yeah, we've talked about all the reasons why we wouldn't continue through. It says begin braking by tapping your brake pedal. This is if someone's behind you nearby. If there's no one behind you, you don't have to do the tap to flash your lights. You can just go right into braking. Remember, slow down early and then gradually move up and leave half of a car length between you and the car in front of you. Okay, if you can't see their back tires touching the pavement, you're too close to them. You're playing the inching game, and that's bad. Okay, you see a lot of drivers doing this on the road. They inch up close to each other at the intersection. And then guess what happens if someone rear ends you and you've been playing the inching game and you get pushed into the car in front of you? Guess what? You're going to be ticketed for hitting the car in front of you. It doesn't matter that you were pushed. You didn't leave the appropriate amount of space necessary. You may or may not get the ticket, you know, it just depends on the situation. But if they want to give it to you, they could, because you didn't leave half a car length, you left 4 inches. So don't play the inching game, it's stupid. Okay, staggered stops. We've talked about the solid white line that you see at lights and stop signs before. Your car has to stop without passing the white line. Technically, your front bumper cannot even overlap it. It has to be before it. Now, most intersections in Michigan, the white line goes across both lanes. I've seen spots where it's like this, but usually they both line up next to each other. Now, in that case, the inside lane, the one next to the center line, they would leave half of a car length between them and the white line. So if the white line was here, you would still stop here. You would leave this gap open. Here, you're required to stop here, obviously, because that's where the white line is. But that's what a staggered stop is. They're not in line with each other. There's a stagger, and that allows large vehicles like a semi to turn in front of you and not hit you. Now let's say this white line was up here and you pulled all the way up to it, and then the semi turned and hit you. That's not your fault. You were behind the white line where you're supposed to be, but that doesn't change the fact that you're in an accident. Okay, you got to stop, exchange information, and go through all of that stuff. You know, we'd much rather just not be in the accident. So when stopping, you obviously, if it's in this configuration, you're stopping here no matter what. If the white line were up here, you would still want to stop back here just to avoid those accidents. And then you can see like sort of a real world picture of it there. Let me check out your smiling faces real quick. Everyone's still awake. Yeah, okay. Not too bad, not too bad. At least see your eyes on most of you. All right, double stops. So it says consists of stopping at a stop sign or line, even if the view is blocked, then pulling ahead. So again, we've told you, if there's a white line, you stop at the white line. If there's a stop sign, you stop without passing a stop sign. That is never optional. Okay, this is the thing that most people fail the driving test doing, is when they pull up to a red light or to a stop sign and there's a white line or the sign there, you don't stop for it. Okay, what happens is this: we teach you to do it right, and then you spend 6 months to a year with your parents unlearning that, because you're going to learn that a lot of stop signs, probably the majority of them, you can't see. You pull up to the sign where you're supposed to stop, and then you look and you're like, I can't tell if it's clear. What do I do? Well, that's what a double stop is. Once you stopped at the sign, now you're free to move as far forward as you want. You just have to make that first stop. You can go a whole car length if you need to make sure it's clear, because we never expect you to make an unsafe turn. Okay, but you still have to make that first stop. Now, like I said, you're gonna get in the car with your parents, and they're gonna have you drive to school every day and home from practice every day, and you're gonna go past stop signs every single day, the exact same stop sign that you can't see. And eventually your brain's gonna go, I know I need to be a whole car length past this sign in order to turn. And eventually your brain's gonna stop the car past the sign, because that's where you need to be. And you get away with it for 6 months to a year, and a cop never sees you do it. And then you take the driving test. And the driving test is local, and you're going down the exact same road you've been down hundreds of times. You come to the exact same stop sign you've been to 100 times, and you roll past it just like you've done 100 times, and the test is over, because that's instant fail. You cannot roll past the stop sign or that solid white line. It is much better to slam on the brakes and come to a screeching stop than to pass that sign on the driving test anyway. In the real world, you could probably get away with rolling one or two here and there, but eventually a cop will see you do it and you will get a ticket. Okay? And I have seen plenty of people get that ticket. So you got to stop where you're supposed to. If you can't see, though, you're allowed to move forward after the fact. All right, so here's some pictures of it. They're not very good. In this one, we have an actual stop line, so we would stop behind the white stop line. In all of the other ones, there's a stop sign, so we would never pass the stop signs at all. Let's say in this one over here, the one that says crosswalk, let's say instead of a stop sign, it was a red light. So there was no stop sign here. There's no white line, there's no stop sign. In this case, we want to stop without passing the crosswalk. You never want to be overlapping a crosswalk, because people need to walk through that to be safe. Sometimes there's no painted crosswalk, but there's an implied crosswalk, okay? You see a sidewalk coming from the right, it stops at the road and then picks up again on the left. It's just assumed people are going to walk there. So again, you would not overlap that space. So if you're stopped on a crosswalk, you're doing it wrong. Now, let's say you've stopped here and you can't see. Well, if there's no one in the crosswalk, then you can scoot up, look, and go. But if there's people wanting to use the crosswalk, let them go before you inch up to see better. I'll leave that up for a second for you to look at it, but basically it's just showing where we stay stopped. All right, turning at intersections, some things to consider. First off, we're going to check oncoming and cross traffic and other highway and roadway users. So you're making a right at a light. You got a green light. Okay, green says we can go straight, it says we can go right, and we can turn left on a green light if no oncoming cars are coming. But here's the deal. When you have a green light, usually the crosswalks have a walk sign. Okay, so if you have a green light to go straight, the people who are walking the same directions as you have a sign saying walk. So if we're going to turn at a green light, there's a chance we could hit someone in a crosswalk. Okay, green light does not mean the crosswalk is empty. So before turning, we're looking for any cars coming from the left. We're looking for any cars coming from in front of us, and we're checking that that crosswalk is clear. Okay, Davison has a bad habit about this. A lot of crossing guards and things have been hit by people turning. Okay, it happens all the time in my driver's ed cars. We'll be waiting at a green light for someone to go through the crosswalk, and 2 and 3 cars behind us, people are laying on the horn because we're not going. Because they're not paying attention. There's a person there. So always check the crosswalks, guys. You can't undo that. As always, they say check your mirrors because someone could be coming up behind you very fast. And make sure to use your traffic signal and make sure that you turn into the appropriate lane. You're going to see a lot of repetition on some of these steps. So, we left off with steering into the proper lane, adjust your speed as necessary. And then they say check traffic again. Obviously, someone could still be coming from behind you. You would see this in your mirrors. And again, all the same steps. Steering, gas and brakes, check your mirrors. I don't have to repeat these every time. This is just what driving is, right? We're using our pedals, we're using the wheels, we're using our eyes. All right, turning left. You have to, this is what I tried to talk about earlier about turning into the correct lane. So in this corner of the picture, we have a car in the leftmost lane making a left turn. They follow the dotted line and they end in the leftmost available lane. Yes, these 2 lanes are further to the left, but they're not for us. So from the left lane to the left lane. Now from here, they're in the rightmost lane and turning left. Now they ended in the appropriate lane, but they started in the wrong one. So if they should have been in this lane to start. Now another option, like I said, sometimes you're this car here, Taco Bell is right here, and you want some tacos, so you go wide and you end up in this lane here. Like I said, 1 in a million chance that causes a problem, but if it does, you're going to be at fault. And if you do it on the driving test, you're going to lose some points. But people do that. But this is what you should be doing. I'll leave that picture up for a second if you guys got small screens or something. All right, so a couple other steps. Search, make sure it's clear, wait for gap in traffic, and turn when appropriate, right? So when making left turns, obviously there could be oncoming cars. We wait till it's clear. You can't really see it, but there's a pedestrian right here. We would wait for him to be clear. By the way, if a pedestrian is coming toward you in a crosswalk, if they're in the crosswalk, walking toward you, it doesn't matter that they're still on this side of the road. You have to wait for them to get all the way by. Now, if they're walking away from you and they've already passed you, again, you want at least a whole lane before you pull out because he might be drop his cell phone right here, you didn't notice it, and then he turns around and grabs it. So if they're walking away, wait till they're at least a lane away from you. If they're walking toward you, just wait until they're past you. All right, making right turns. Let's see if the picture gets bigger here. Yes, okay. So again, we're checking traffic, we're checking pedestrians, but let's look at the picture. So this person did it correctly. They started in the rightmost lane, they ended in the rightmost lane. This person did it wrong. They started in the leftmost lane and ended in the rightmost lane. They cut someone off. You might be thinking like, okay, who would do this? It happens a lot, okay? Someone wants to turn right, but they didn't realize this was the road they needed. So they're in this lane. And then suddenly they realize, I need to go right. And what they do is as soon as the light turns green, they floor it and go because they think they're just going to beat you to it. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But yeah, a lot of people will make this mistake intentionally because they're in a hurry and they weren't paying enough attention. So it can happen to you. Just don't be the guy who does it. Okay, I mentioned before that sometimes there's two lanes to go the same direction. In this case, it's two left turns. If you're from Davison, this is Irish Road, this is Lapeer Road, this is Meyer. Okay, if you're turning left off of Irish onto Lapeer in front of Meyer, there's two left turn lanes. And it's incredibly important that we don't cross over in the middle of the turn because there's a car next to you. Okay, when I was a teenager and still in high school, I got run off the road this way. I was in the outer lane. Someone crossed into the inner lane and they put me off the road. No contact was made, so I was able to go on with my day, but I was not happy, to say the least. Let's get the rest of their steps up there for you to see. That's the same advice. So pavement markings, guys. You got to look for this kind of stuff on the lanes. As new drivers, you're not seeing as much, but you'd be surprised how many times I'll be like, okay, go straight at the light, and you guys do a lane change all of a sudden. I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, well, you said go straight. I'm like, yeah, but the arrow's over here or something. Look for the arrows. In Michigan, because it's a snow state, you're also going to see signs. Either they're going to be hanging somewhere near the lights or they'll be off to the side telling you which lane does what. If there are no arrows, then they probably all go straight. You get the idea. All right, we've got a video about changing lanes. You guys, this is when a lot of accidents can occur, is changing lanes because people aren't looking appropriately. So pay close attention to this video. You see how long it is. It's only a minute long, so you don't need any kind of break or anything, but I do need to switch to the other thing. All right, here we go. Get back in.
The time that it is an absolute necessity to check behind is before we attempt to move into someone else's lane. As we saw in an earlier session, with the mirrors adjusted properly, we can see cars behind us. And if a car appears in the side mirror at all, it is too close. Of course, we still have to look to the side. By using our mirrors to glance behind us, we can keep our attention focused primarily ahead, which is our first duty. We also need to check the mirrors after a pass. It looks far enough back, but that's a convex mirror. Only the inside rear mirror can give us the true picture. It's safe to change lanes only when we can see the whole front of the car.
All right, sorry about that. I was muted and thought I wasn't. So I was talking for like a minute. When is it absolutely necessary to check behind you? Hannah, do you got an answer for that?
When you like can't see, I don't know.
Well, it's not the best answer because even when you can see, because sometimes you're going to think that you can see when you actually can't. So really it's any time we're changing lanes or about to turn, we need to check behind. Now, that means like with turning, you know, your mirrors are fine because you're not changing lanes. If you're changing lanes, you need to look over your shoulder the direction you're going to go. So if you're making a left lane change, it's the look over the left shoulder. So right, look over the right shoulder. You're looking out those back side windows. You're not trying to see what's directly behind you. You're trying to see what's next to you, those blind spots. And again, even if you think that you know it's clear, still look. It should become a habit. You will be shocked if you don't look. One of these days, you're going to either look and be shocked that the car is there when you thought that there wasn't, or you're not going to look and you're going to be shocked when you run someone off the road and kill them. Either way, you should be looking behind you anytime you're going to change lanes. When is a car too close to your vehicle when attempting to change lanes? This really depends on the situation. If there was just one straight answer, I'd give it to you. I think in the video, they basically say, if you can see them in your mirror, they're too close, which is a good rule of thumb. But that doesn't really take into account city driving where people are going at like 10 miles per hour, slow traffic, a gap opens up, you know, and you can move into it. So it really is going to depend on your speed. You know, if I could just tell you, it would be easy, but you kind of learn this through practice. That's the whole point of having your parents in the car with you for 50 hours, because you're going to be like, okay, I think I got enough room. And then your parents are going to go, no, you should actually, he's too close. So you start to learn it through that practice. If I could just put it into words for you, it would be easy, but I can't. Which mirror gives you the true picture of where other vehicles are behind you? So between the inside or the outside mirror, which one gives you an actual true representation? For this question, we're going to go with Jacob.
Wait, which question was that again?
The third one. So of the two types of mirrors, the outside or the inside mirror, which one gives you an accurate representation of what's behind you and how far it is behind you?
The inside rear view mirror.
That is correct. The inside mirror, the one over your shoulder, is a flat, true mirror. It's going to show you exactly what's behind you, just give you a reverse image of it. The outside mirrors are not flat. They have a rounding to them. They're shaped differently, and that rounding shape causes them to distort the size of everything in the mirror. It makes everything look smaller, but it allows us to see more. And it's nice that when we only got two little mirrors looking behind us, if we can see more, right? So there is an advantage to that. The downside is that our brains think that something that's small that we know should be big is really far away, right? You see a tiny elephant in a field, your brain says that's a normal size elephant that's far away. Well, when we look in these mirrors and we see a tiny car, our brain says that car is way behind us. We're good to go. But it's not. If you look over your shoulder, you'll notice that the car is actually much closer. It didn't appear small because of its distance from us. It appeared small because the mirror was shaped funny. So don't be tricked by your outside mirrors. Always look over the shoulder. Okay, so the steps of changing a lane. First step, we said maintain safe following interval and signal. So we should have a good safe following distance between us and the vehicle in front of us if we're changing lanes. If they're really close to us and we change lanes and then they also change lanes, like say without a blinker, we could have an accident. So be far enough away from them that they're not going to be a factor at all. Turn on the signal. Again, this is letting them and the people behind us know that we're about to change lanes. So if they had it in their mind that they were about to change lane, they may rethink that. Unfortunately, in the world we live in, sometimes you putting on a blinker causes them to go immediately without using a blinker. There's a lot of selfish people out there, guys. It's unfortunate. So put the blinker on and then hesitate to see what others do, then go. Don't just go with your blinker. Obviously, we're going to check our mirrors first. If we see a car next to us in our mirror, we probably don't have the room to change lanes. Somewhere in here it should have said check over our shoulder. They skipped that. So even the slide makers make that mistake. You should be checking your blind spots. Adjust speed. We may have to speed up or slow down to sort of match our speed to the gap that we're moving into. We steer into that lane, and then we shut off our blinker, and again, adjust speed if necessary. Maybe we got over and the car behind us was going too fast. 1 second, guys. I'll let Mrs. Harriman answer that. Okay. Moving on. So what are some problems associated with changing lanes? People not using turn signals. So this is probably the most common mistake people make or improper thing that people do. The other one would be like changing into the other lane, like I said before, when they shouldn't, when turning. But not using a blinker. And I don't get it, okay? You're holding a steering wheel. The blinker's right there. You know, if you got a big hand, you don't even have to let go. You can just grab it with the pinky or something. Okay? I mean, you would have to have your whole arm fused in a cast not to hit that thing. So use it. Okay? There's no reason not to. Another problem with changing lanes. This happens with you guys a lot. You're like, okay, I'm doing a lane change. I'm nervous. Let me slow down to be safe. Well, no, slowing down is bad. We usually don't want to slow down when changing lanes. There's only a few instances where you would. Like if you were, like I said, in a city where you're just getting over into a small gap, you might need to slow down. But usually we want to maintain our speed or speed up because the person behind us shouldn't have to touch their brake. They should be able to just stay where they're at and we move in front of them. Especially on the expressway, it's important not to slow down. And then not selecting a safe gap. We think we have enough room to change lanes. We start to go and we run out of room. And either we swerve back or someone has to slam on their brakes, whatever. Like I said, the other people shouldn't have to do anything for you to get into that space. It shouldn't require anything on their part. Same thing if you're pulling out of a parking lot or from a side street out onto another road. The people around you should not have to touch their brake pedal for you to do that. Okay, because you don't know what they're doing. They could be distracted by something, looking elsewhere. If someone has to touch their brake for you to pull out, you should have waited longer. Okay, we've got another video. Let's see, it's 7:44, so we got plenty of time here. This is about turning around. Sometimes you'll hear it called a turnabout or whatever, but there's different ways to turn around on a road. You may have heard of U-turns before. You may have heard of a three-point turn. This video is going to describe those. And, you know, it's good to see it in action. It's better than the words I can describe it with. So pay attention in this. Again, it's a short video, only under 2 minutes here. Let's see. All right, I'll see you in a couple minutes.
When driving and you need to turn around, the safest way is to back into an alley or driveway on the right. Before turning around, check traffic to the rear and signal intention to the right. Make sure the alleyway or driveway is clear. Back slowly, turning the steering wheel all the way to the right. As the vehicle centers in the alley or driveway, straighten the wheels. Then turn on the left signal, shift to drive, and check the traffic in both directions. Turn left into the proper lane and accelerate as appropriate. Another way to turn around is to head into an alley or driveway on the left. To do this, check traffic and signal left. Stop as the rear bumper clears the edge of the roadway. To back out, shift to reverse. Signal to the right and check traffic. When it is safe, turn the steering wheel rapidly all the way to the right, then straighten the steering wheel as you enter the lane. Then shift to drive and accelerate smoothly. A more complex way to turn around, if there are no alleys or driveways, is to complete a three-point turnabout. To do this, check traffic, signal right, and stop as close as possible to the right edge of the roadway. Check traffic again, signal left, turn and move slowly forward while steering rapidly all the way to the left. Quickly check for traffic, shift to reverse, back slowly and steer sharply to the right until your wheels are close to the edge of the road. Again, check traffic, shift to drive, and steer into the proper lane, adjusting speed as appropriate.
Okay. So what is the safest way to turn around? They may not have described that real well in the video, but I'll pick someone. Lily, do you happen to notice what is the safest way to turn around? What it would be called?
It's when you turn into like a driveway or like a side road.
All right, that's most of it. Specifically, using a driveway on the right as opposed to the left would be the safest way to do it. Then the second safest way would be to use a driveway on the left instead of the right. And we'll describe the differences between those in a second here. I think they have some pictures of that. Number two, when heading into an alleyway or a driveway on your left, turn around your vehicle. Where should you stop your vehicle once in the lane? So what they're saying here is you're getting ready to pull into like a driveway on your left. So you haven't actually turned yet, but you're stopping to wait to turn. You're going to stop with your car before the driveway. Like I said, this will make sense in a second when I show you the picture. If you were using a driveway on your right, you would pass the driveway. 3, when is the only time you should use the three-point turnaround maneuver? So here's the deal. Some textbooks call all types of turns that are 3 points a three-point turn. These slides are referring to what they showed in the video where the car was kind of like turning around in the road by like kind of half turning, then backing up and going. That's what the video is calling a three-point turn. The test makers that you take, the tests you take, they often use only a driveway on the right is like the only three-point turn they refer to. So this question is not very good because it's referring to a couple different things. So again, we'll just cover that when I ask some pictures. So here we go. Turning around to the left and the right. So they said that the safest way to turn around was to use a driveway on your right. And in the slides, they're calling it a two-point turn, even though you'll see in a second that there's 3 points. So the first thing you do is you drive past the driveway. The reason we go past it is that we want to back into it. So this is like one motion, we back into it, that's 2 motions, and then we pull out, that's 3 motions. That's why, 2 points, or is it 3, right? I mean, they even got 4 numbers here, but point is, we put on our blinker, we drive past, stop, put the car in reverse, we back into the driveway, stop, put it into drive, and we go. Now, why did we back into it instead of pulling forward? Well, the reason for that is that when we leave this driveway, we're crossing 2 different directions of traffic. Okay, this lane cars are going this direction, this lane cars are coming back this direction. And anytime we're going to cross 2 directions of traffic, we want to be looking forward. Okay, the opposite of that, if we were to use a driveway that's on the left, think about when you leave a driveway on the left to go into this lane, there's only 1 lane of traffic. But when we turn into it, there's 2 directions of traffic. So using a driveway on the left, we pull forward into it and then back into the single lane, put it in drive and go. So driveways on the right, back into them. Driveways on the left, pull forward into them. Now in the real world, if you pulled forward into the right and backed out, whatever, that's fine. You're making it a little more difficult for yourself, but it's not the end of the world. But you do have better visibility in these cases if you back in on the right or pull in on the left. Now, again, if there was no driveway, the same thing would happen. You would be driving along, you would turn about half of a turn, you would stop because your car would be facing the curb, you would back up, stop, put it in drive, and then pull forward. It's the same basic motions, you're just doing it without the benefit of another driveway, which means you need to have a road with no traffic. And then if you're on a really wide road, you could just do a U-turn, which is where you turn from one lane into the other. A lot of people think U-turns are illegal, but they are not. There could be signs, however, forbidding them. So this is their attempt at showing you what a three-point turn looks like, but it's a terrible set of slides. So bear with me. So you're driving along, and this is the bottom slide, labeled 1. You would throw on your left, well, here they put on the right blinker because you're getting over to the right side of the lane, and then you put on your left blinker indicating you're going to turn around. So you notice they're right next to the curb here, number 2. That way they can make the widest turn that they can. They're not going to get the whole way. So they would turn from here into this position, and then you would stop and put the car in reverse. Now, it doesn't, the way the slides flow, it's confusing. The car would back up like this, and now imagine that it's here. Like this is right here. So you curve until you're no longer facing this direction, you are facing this direction. So you back into this position, and then you would drive forward, which would look like this. So I hate the way they arrange these slides, but you pull over, you start to turn, you back up, and then you pull and go the other way. Like I said, just like with you had a driveway, but there is no driveway. You can imagine if there was a driveway here, you'd pull all the way in, or if there was a driveway here, you could back into it. It just doesn't exist there. I'll leave it up for a second. Yeah, never try to do this on a hill or a curve, by the way, because you're not going to be able to see if someone's coming. All right, so a U-turn. Again, this is not a very good picture. You're not going to probably do a U-turn on a 2-lane road like this. You need something a little wider. And you would start off all the way to the right, and you would end all the way to the right. As long as there's no cars coming from either direction, again, no one should have to touch a brake. If anyone has to adjust position or touch a brake to allow you to do this, it's illegal to do it. That's called reckless driving. You're forcing other people to have to do stuff. But if you can do this maneuver without causing any trouble to anyone else, it's perfectly legal to do a U-turn. That being said, again, there could be a sign right here that says no U-turns, in which case you wouldn't do it. Again, I'll leave it up for a second if you want to read those because you're more of a reading person. All right, we got about 5 minutes. Let's see how long this video is. It's about 4 minutes. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'll play this video, and once it gets done, you guys are free to go. You can hang around if you have any questions or things like that. Let me stop sharing. Reshare. And this is basically the end of the unit anyway. So enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Turns into parking spaces are like any other turn, only a bit tighter. We position the car and signal just as we would for a right turn. We're far enough away from the other cars to make a wide turn. As we turn, we get our left bumper as close to the left as we can, so that our right rear clears the car on the right. And then pull all the way to the curb. Angle parking is similar, but easier. Getting in and out of a parking place along the curb is a good test of our ability to handle a car. Some states include it on the license exam. First, we stop with the back end of the car even with the front of the parking spot, about 2 feet away from the other car. We shift to reverse and check behind. We back slowly, turning the steering wheel to the right until the car is aimed at the back of the parking space. Then we straighten the steering wheel to drive toward the car behind. As we clear the rear of the other car, we turn the steering wheel sharply left while backing slowly. We want to keep the rear wheels 6 to 12 inches from the curb. If the tires are against the curb, we can't turn. We continue backing until the car almost touches the car behind. Now, we turn the wheel to the right and pull forward until the car is lined up with the curb. We move the car back or forward as needed to even out the space. Parallel parking is tricky and doesn't always succeed the first time. We may end up too close to the curb and find that we can't back far enough. Or we may end up too far from the curb and too far out in the street. If so, our best bet is to pull out and start the process over again. Leaving is a little easier. We back the car slowly, then we turn the wheel to the right to aim the front of the car toward the street. If the parking space is cramped, we may need to start backing with the wheel hard to the right. Turn hard left and enter the street slowly. After entering the street, we steer to the right to align the vehicle in the lane, straighten the steering wheel, and accelerate to match the speed of traffic. Just to be absolutely sure it doesn't take off on its own. Of course, we always set the parking brake and put the car in park, so this will never happen. Well, almost always. If we're parked on a downgrade, we need to turn the wheels sharply to the right and let the car roll up against the curb. If there's no curb, we just turn the wheel sharply to the right. If the car does roll, it will stay out of the road. Facing uphill, we can turn the wheels sharply left and let the car roll backward against the curb. Again, if there's no curb, we can turn the wheel right so the car would roll away from the road.
All right, guys, goodbye. Like I said, if you have any questions or anything, you can ask me or put it in the chat.
Is Miss Harrington there so I could speak to her?
Yeah, who said that?
Angelina? Oh, my camera.
I'll ask her to come down for a second, or if you can tell me your question, I can tell her as well.
I needed the number for the driver's test for my brother. She said she was gonna give it to me, but then she never did.
Okay. Yeah, I can look for that. Hey. I should have that number myself.
Okay.
I'll text it into chat so that you can get
Okay, thank you.
correct. This is AK Services. June. Is that, why is that not sending? Enter. No, not to. That's why. All right, so hopefully you'll get that message there. And I'll give you the website as well, actually. She's really nice. And if he took segment 2 with us, he probably met her. She comes around to all the classes.
My brother is 18. He didn't take the driver's test.
Oh, okay. Well, she still handles those.
Yeah, he waited for some reason.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. A lot of states, that's just, they're not even a driver's ed at all. They just do it that way. So.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Have a good day.
You too.